and Judah will be there to receive us. From the side of the middle summit garnished green with myrtle and olive trees, they saw, upon looking that way next, thin columns of smoke rising lightly and straight up into the pulseless morning, each a warning of restless pilgrims astir, and of the flight of the pitiless hours, and the need of haste. Though the good servant toiled faithfully to lighten the labor in descending the hillside, not sparing herself in the least, the girl moaned at every step. Sometimes in extremity of anguish she cried out, upon reaching the road, that is, the road between the mount of offense in the middle or second summit of Olivet, she fell down exhausted. "Go on with Amra, mother, and leave me here," she said, faintly. "No, no, Tirzah. What would the gain be to me if I were healed and you not? When Judah asks for you, as he will, what would I have to say to him were I to leave you? Tell him I loved him." The elder leper arose from bending over the fainting sufferer, and gazed about her with that sensation of hope perishing which is more nearly like annihilation of the soul than anything else. The supremest joy of the thought of cure was inseparable from Tirzah, who was not too old to forget, in the happiness of healthful life to come, the years of misery by which she had been so reduced in body and broken in spirit. Even as the brave woman was about leaving the venture they were engaged into the determination of God, she saw a man on foot coming rapidly up the road from the east. "Courage, Tirzah, be of cheer," she said. "Yonder I know is one to tell us of the Nazarene." Amra helped the girl to a sitting posture, and supported her while the man advanced. "In your goodness, mother, you forget what we are. The stranger will go around us, his best gift to us will be a curse, if not a stone." "We will see." There was no other answer to be given, since the mother was too well and sadly acquainted with the treatment outcasts of the class to which she belonged were accustomed to at the hands of her countrymen. As has been said, the road at the edge of which the group was posted was little more than a worn path or trail, winding crookedly through tumuli of limestone. If the stranger kept it, he must meet them face to face, and he did so, until near enough to hear the cry she was bound to give. Then, uncovering her head, a further demand of the law, she shouted shrilly, "Unclean, unclean." To her surprise, the man came steadily on. "What would you have?" he asked, stopping opposite them not 4 yards off. "Thou sentest us." "Have a care," the mother said, with dignity. "Woman, I am the courier of him who speaketh but once to such as thou and they are healed. I am not afraid." "The Nazarene the Messiah," he said. "Is it true that he cometh to the city today?" "He is now at Bethphage." "On what road, Master?" "This one." She clasped her hands, and looked up thankfully. "For whom takest thou him?" the man asked, with pity. "The Son of God," she replied. "Stay thou here then, or, as there is a multitude with him, take thy stand by the rock yonder, the white one under the tree, and as he goeth by fail not to call to him. Call, and fear not. If thy faith but equal thy knowledge, he will hear thee though all the heavens thunder. I go to tell Israel, assembled in and about the city, that he is at hand, and to make ready to receive him. Peace to thee and thine." "Woman," the stranger moved on. "Did you hear, Tirzah? Did you hear? The Nazarene is on the road, on this one, and he will hear us. Once more, my child, oh, only once, and let us to the rock. It is but a step." Thus encouraged, Tirzah took Amra's hand and arose, but as they were going, Amra said, "Stay, the man is returning," and they waited for him. "I pray your grace, woman," he said, upon overtaking them, "remembering that the sun will be hot before the Nazarene arrives, and that the city is nearby, to give me refreshment should I need it. I thought this water would do thee better than it will me. Take it and be of good cheer. Call to him as he passes." He followed the words by offering her a gourd full of water, such as foot travelers sometimes carried with them in their journeys across the hills, and instead of placing the gift on the ground for her to take up when he was at a safe distance, he gave it into her hand. "Art thou a Jew?" she asked, surprised. "I am that, and better. I am a disciple of the Christ who teacheth daily by word and example this thing which I have done unto you. The world hath long known the word charity without understanding it. Again I say peace and good cheer to thee and thine." He went on, and they went slowly to the rock he had pointed out to them, high as their heads, and scarcely 30 yards from the road on the right. Standing in front of it, the mother satisfied herself they could be seen and heard plainly by passers-by whose notice they desired to attract. There they cast themselves under the tree in its shade, and drank of the gourd, and rested refreshed. Ere long Tirzah slept, and fearing to disturb her, the others held their peace. Chapter 4. During the third hour the road in front of the resting place of the lepers became gradually more and more frequented by people going in the direction of Bethphage and Bethany. Now, however, about the commencement of the fourth hour, a great crowd appeared over the crest of Olivet, and as it defiled down the road thousands in number, the two watchers noticed with wonder that everyone in it carried a palm branch freshly cut. As they sat absorbed by the novelty, the noise of another multitude approaching from the east drew their eyes that way. Then the mother awoke Tirzah. "What is the meaning of it all?" the latter asked. "He is coming," answered the mother. "These we see are from the city going to meet him. Those we hear in the east are his friends bearing him company. And it will not be strange if the processions meet here before us. I fear, if they do, we cannot be heard." The same thought was in the elder's mind. "Amrah," she asked, "when Judah spoke of the healing of the 10, in what words did he say they called to the Nazarene? Either they said, 'Lord, have mercy upon us,' or 'Master, have mercy,' only that, no more that I heard." "Yet it was enough," the mother added, to herself. "Yes," said Amrah, "Judah said he saw them go away well." Meantime the people in the east came up slowly. When at length the foremost of them were in sight, the gaze of the lepers fixed upon a man riding in the midst of what seemed a chosen company, which sang and danced about him in extravagance of joy. The rider was bareheaded and clad all in white. When he was in distance to be more clearly observed, these, looking anxiously, saw an olive-hued face shaded by long chestnut hair slightly sunburned and parted in the middle. He looked neither to the right nor left. In the noisy abandon of his followers he appeared to have no part, nor did their favor disturb him in the least, or raise him out of the profound melancholy into which, as his countenance showed, he was plunged. The sun beat upon the back of his head, and lighting up the floating hair gave it a delicate likeness to a golden nimbus. Behind him the irregular procession, pouring forward with continuous singing and shouting, extended out of view. There was no need of anyone to tell the lepers that this was he, the wonderful Nazarene. "He is here," Tirzah the mother said. "He is here. Come, my child." As she spoke she glided in front of the white rock and fell upon her knees. Directly the daughter and servant were by her side. Then at sight of the procession in the west, the thousands from the city halted, and began to wave their green branches, shouting, or rather chanting, for it was all in one voice, "Blessed is the King of Israel that cometh in the name of the Lord." And all the thousands who were of the rider's company, both those near and those afar, replied, so the air shook with the sound, which was as a great wind threshing the side of the hill. Amidst the din, the cries of the poor lepers were not more than the twittering of dazed sparrows. The moment of the meeting of the hosts was come, and with it the opportunity the sufferers were seeking. If not taken, it would be lost forever, and they would be lost as well. "Nearer, my child, let us get nearer." "He cannot hear us," said the mother. She arose and staggered forward. Her ghastly hands were up, and she screamed with horrible shrillness. The people saw her hideous face, and stopped awestruck, an effect for which extreme human misery, visible as in this instance, is as potent as majesty in purple and gold. Tirzah, behind her a little way, fell down too faint and frightened to follow farther. The lepers, "Stone them, the accursed of God, kill them." These, with other yells of like import, broke in upon the hosannas of the part of the multitude too far removed to see and understand the cause of the interruption. Some there were, however, nearby familiar with the nature of the man to whom the unfortunates were appealing, some who, by long intercourse with him, had caught somewhat of his divine compassion. They gazed at him, and were silent while, in fair view, he rode up and stopped in front of the woman. She also beheld his face, calm, pitiful, and of exceeding beauty, the large eyes tender with benignant purpose, and this was the colloquy that ensued: "O Master, Master, thou seest our need, thou canst make us clean. Have mercy upon us, mercy. Believest thou I am able to do this?" he asked. "Thou art he of whom the prophets spake, thou art the Messiah," she replied. His eyes grew radiant, his manner confident. "Woman," he said, "great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt." He lingered an instant after, apparently unconscious of the presence of the throng, an instant, then he rode away, to the heart divinely original, yet so human in all the better elements of humanity, going with sure prevision to a death of all the inventions of men the foulest and most cruel, breathing even then in the forecast shadow of the awful event, and still as hungry and thirsty for love and faith as in the beginning. How precious and ineffably soothing the farewell exclamation of the grateful woman, "To God in the highest, glory, blessed, thrice blessed, the Son whom he hath given us." Immediately both the hosts, that from the city and that from Bethphage, closed around him with their joyous demonstrations, with hosannas and waving of palms, and so he passed from the lepers forever. Covering her head, the elder hastened to Tirzah, and folded her in her arms, crying, "Daughter, look up. I have his promise, he is indeed the Messiah. We are saved, saved," and the two remained kneeling while the procession, slowly going, disappeared over the mount. When the noise of its singing afar was a sound scarcely heard, the miracle began. There was first in the hearts of the lepers a freshening of the blood, then it flowed faster and stronger, thrilling their wasted bodies with an infinitely sweet sense of painless healing. Each felt the scourge going from her, their strength revived, they were returning to be themselves. Directly, as if to make the purification complete, from body to spirit the quickening ran, exalting them to a very fervor of ecstasy. The power possessing them to this good end was most nearly that of a draught of swift and happy effect, yet it was unlike and superior in that its healing and cleansing were absolute, and not merely a delicious consciousness while in progress, but the planting, growing, and maturing all at once of a recollection so singular and so holy, that the simple thought of it should be of itself, ever after a formless yet perfect thanksgiving. To this transformation, for such it may be called quite as properly as a cure, there was a witness other than Amra. The reader will remember the constancy with which Ben-Hur had followed the Nazarene throughout his wanderings, and now, recalling the conversation of the night before, there will be little surprise at learning that the young Jew was present when the leprous woman appeared in the path of the pilgrims. He heard her prayer and saw her disfigured face. He heard the answer also, and was not so accustomed to incidents of the kind, frequent as they had been, as to have lost interest in them. Had such thing been possible with him, still the bitter disputation always excited by the simplest display of the Master's curative gift would have sufficed to keep his curiosity alive. Besides that, if not above it as an incentive, his hope to satisfy himself upon the vexed question of the mission of the mysterious man was still upon him strong as in the beginning, we might indeed say even stronger, because of a belief that now quickly, before the sun went down, the man himself would make all known by public proclamation. At the close of the scene, consequently, Ben-Hur had withdrawn from the procession, and seated himself upon a stone to wait its passage. From his place he nodded recognition to many of the people, Galileans in his league, carrying short swords under their long abas. After a little a swarthy Arab came up leading 2 horses. At a sign from Ben-Hur he also drew out. "Stay here," the young master said, when all were gone by, even the laggards. "I wish to be at the city early, and Aldebaran must do me service." He stroked the broad forehead of the horse, now in his prime of strength and beauty, then crossed the road towards the 2 women. They were to him, it should be borne in mind, strangers in whom he felt interest only as they were subjects of a superhuman experiment, the result of which might possibly help him to solution of the mystery that had so long engaged him. As he proceeded, he glanced casually at the figure of the little woman over by the white rock, standing there, her face hidden in her hands. "As the Lord liveth, it is Amra," he said to himself. He hurried on, and passing by the mother and daughter, still without recognizing them, he stopped before the servant. "Amra," he said to her, "Amra, what do you hear?" She rushed forward, and fell upon her knees before him, blinded by her tears, nigh speechless with contending joy and fear. "Oh master, master, by God and mine, how good he is!" The knowledge we gain from much sympathy with others passing through trials is but vaguely understood. Strangely enough, it enables us, among other things, to merge our identity into theirs often so completely that their sorrows and their delights become our own. So poor Amra, aloof and hiding her face, knew the transformation the lepers were undergoing without a word spoken to her, knew it, and shared all their feeling to the full. Her countenance, her words, her whole manner, betrayed her condition, and with swift presentiment he connected it with the women he had just passed. He felt her presence there at that time was in some way associated with them, and turned hastily as they arose to their feet. His heart stood still, he became rooted in his tracks, dumb past outcry, awestruck. The woman he had seen before the Nazarene was standing with her hands clasped and eyes streaming, looking towards heaven. The mere transformation would have been a sufficient surprise, but it was the least of the causes of his emotion. Could he be mistaken? Never was there in life a stranger so like his mother, and like her as she was the day the Romans snatched her from him. There was but one difference to mar the identity. The hair of this person was a little streaked with gray. Yet that was not impossible of reconcilement, since the intelligence which had directed the miracle might have taken into consideration the natural effects of the passage of years. And who was it by her side, if not Tirzah, fair, beautiful, perfect, more mature, but in all other respects exactly the same in appearance as when she looked with him over the parapet the morning of the accident to Gratus. He had given them over as dead, and time had accustomed him to the bereavement. He had not ceased mourning for them. Yet, as something distinguishable, they had simply dropped out of his plans and dreams. Scarcely believing his senses, he laid his hand upon the servant's head, and asked, tremulously, Amra, Amra, my mother, Tirzah, tell me if I see aright, speak to them, O master, speak to them, she said. He waited no longer, but ran, with outstretched arms, crying, Mother! Mother! Tirzah! Here I am. They heard his call, and with a cry as loving started to meet him. Suddenly the mother stopped, drew back, and uttered the old alarm, Stay, Judah, my son, come not nearer. Unclean, unclean. The utterance was not from habit, grown since the dread disease struck her, as much as fear, and the fear was but another form of the ever-thoughtful maternal love. Though they were healed in person, the taint of the scourge might be in their garments ready for communication. He had no such thought. They were before him, he had called them, they had answered. Who or what should keep them from him now? Next moment the three, so long separated, were mingling their tears in each other's arms. The first ecstasy over, the mother said, In this happiness, O my children, let us not be ungrateful. Let us begin life anew by acknowledgement of him to whom we are also indebted. They fell upon their knees, Amra with the rest, and the prayer of the elder outspoken was as a psalm. Tirzah repeated it word for word, so did Ben-Hur, but not with the same clear mind and questionless faith. For when they were risen, he asked, In Nazareth, where the man was born, Mother, they call him the son of a carpenter. What is he? Her eyes rested upon him with all their old tenderness, and she answered as she had answered the Nazarene himself, He is the Messiah. And whence has he his power? We may know by the use he makes of it. Can you tell me any ill he has done? No, by that sign then I answer. He has his power from God. It is not an easy thing to shake off in a moment the expectations nurtured through years until they have become essentially a part of us. And though Ben-Hur asked himself what the vanities of the world were to such a one, his ambition was obdurate and would not down. He persisted as men do yet every day in measuring the Christ by himself. How much better if we measured ourselves by the Christ? Naturally, the mother was the first to think of the cares of life. What shall we do now, my son? Where shall we go? Then Ben-Hur, recalled to duty, observed how completely every trace of the scourge had disappeared from his restored people, that each had back her perfection of person, that, as with Naaman when he came up out of the water, their flesh had come again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he took off his cloak, and threw it over Tirzah. Take it, he said, smiling, the eye of the stranger would have shunned you before. Now it shall not offend you. The act exposed his sword belted to his side. Is it a time of war? Asked the mother, anxiously. No. Why, then, are you armed? It may be necessary to defend the Nazarene. Thus Ben-Hur evaded the whole truth. Has he enemies? Who are they? Alice, mother, they are not all Romans. Is he not of Israel, and a man of peace? There was never one more so. But in the opinion of the rabbis and teachers he is guilty of a great crime. What crime? In his eyes the uncircumcised Gentile is as worthy favor as a Jew of the strictest habit. He preaches a new dispensation. The mother was silent, and they moved to the shade of the tree by the rock. Calming his impatience to have them home again and hear their story, he showed them the necessity of obedience to the law governing in cases like theirs, and in conclusion called the Arab, bidding him take the horses to the gate by Bethesda and await them there, whereupon they set out by the way of the Mount of Offense. The return was very different from the coming. They walked rapidly and with ease, and in good time reached a tomb newly made near that of Absalom, overlooking the depths of Cedron. Finding it unoccupied, the women took possession, while he went on hastily to make the preparations required for their new condition. Chapter 5. Ben-Hur pitched 2 tents out on the upper Cedron east a short space of the tombs of the kings, and furnished them with every comfort at his command. And thither, without loss of time, he conducted his mother and sister, to remain until the examining priest could certify their perfect cleansing. In course of the duty, the young man had subjected himself to such serious defilement, as to debar him from participation in the ceremonies of the great feast, then near at hand. He could not enter the least sacred of the courts of the temple. Of necessity, not less than choice, therefore, he stayed at the tents with his beloved people. There was a great deal to hear from them, and a great deal to tell them of himself. Stories such as theirs, sad experiences extending through a lapse of years, sufferings of body, acuter sufferings of mind, are usually long in the telling, the incidents seldom following each other in threaded connection. He listened to the narrative and all they told him, with outward patience masking inward feeling. In fact, his hatred of Romans reached a higher mark than ever. His desire for vengeance became a thirst which attempts at reflection only intensified. In the almost savage bitterness of his humor many mad impulses took hold of him. The opportunities of the highways presented themselves with singular force of temptation. He thought seriously of insurrection in Galilee. Even the sea, ordinarily a retrospective horror to him, stretched itself map-like before his fancy, laced and interlaced with lines of passage crowded with imperial plunder and imperial travelers, but the better judgment matured in calmer hours was happily too firmly fixed to be supplanted by present passion however strong. Each mental venture in reach of new expedients brought him back to the old conclusion, that there could be no sound success except in a war involving all Israel in solid union, and all musing upon the subject, all inquiry, all hope, ended where they began, in the Nazarene and his purposes. At odd moments the excited schemer found a pleasure in fashioning a speech for that person. Hear, O Israel, I am he, the promised of God, born King of the Jews, come to you with the dominion spoken of by the prophets. Rise now, and lay hold on the world. Would the Nazarene but speak these few words, what a tumult would follow. How many mouths performing the office of trumpets would take them up, and blow them abroad for the massing of armies? Would he speak them, and eager to begin the work, and answering in the worldly way? Ben-Hur lost sight of the double nature of the man, and of the other possibility, that the divine in him might transcend the human, in the miracle of which Tears and his mother were the witnesses even more nearly than himself. He saw and set apart and dwelt upon a power ample enough to raise and support a Jewish crown over the wrecks of the Italian, and more than ample to remodel society and convert mankind into one purified happy family. And when that work was done, could anyone say the peace which might then be ordered without hindrance was not a mission worthy a Son of God? Could anyone then deny the Redeemership of the Christ? And discarding all consideration of political consequences, what unspeakable personal glory there would then be to him as a man? It was not in the nature of any mere mortal to refuse such a career. Meantime down the Cedron, and in towards Bethesda, especially on the roadsides quite up to the Damascus gate, the country filled rapidly with all kinds of temporary shelters for pilgrims to the Passover. Ben-Hur visited the strangers, and talked with them, and returning to his tents, he was each time more and more astonished at the vastness of their numbers, and when he further discovered that every part of the world was represented among them, cities upon both shores of the Mediterranean far off as the pillars of the West, river towns in distant India, provinces in northernmost Europe, and that, though they frequently saluted them with tongues unacquainted with a syllable of the old Hebrew of the fathers, these representatives had all the same object: celebration of the notable feast. An idea tinged mistily with superstitious fancy forced itself upon him. Might he not after all have misunderstood the Nazarene? Might not that person by patient waiting be covering silent preparation, and proving his fitness for the glorious task before him? How much better this time for the movement than that other when, by Gennesaret, the Galileans would have forced assumption of the crown. Then the support would have been limited to a few thousands. Now his proclamation would be responded to by millions. Who could say how many? Pursuing this theory to its conclusions, Ben-Hur moved amidst brilliant promises, and glowed with the thought that the melancholy man, under gentle seeming and wondrous self-denial, was in fact carrying in disguise the subtlety of a politician and the genius of a soldier. Several times also, in the meanwhile, low-set, brawny men, bareheaded and black-bearded, came and asked for Ben-Hur at the tent. His interviews with them were always apart, and to his mother's question who they were he answered, "Some good friends of mine from Galilee." Through them he kept informed of the movements of the Nazarene, and of the schemes of the Nazarene's enemies, rabbinical and Roman. That the good man's life was in danger, he knew, but that there were any bold enough to attempt to take it at that time, he could not believe. It seemed too securely entrenched in a great fame and an assured popularity. The very vastness of the attendance in and about the city brought with it a seeming guarantee of safety, and yet, to say truth, Ben-Hur's confidence rested most certainly upon the miraculous power of the Christ. Pondering the subject in the purely human view, that the master of such authority over life and death, used so frequently for the good of others, would not exert it in care of himself, was simply as much past belief as it was past understanding. Nor should it be forgotten that all these were incidents of occurrence between the 21st day of March, counting by the modern calendar, and the 25th. The evening of the latter day Ben-Hur yielded to his impatience and rode to the city, leaving behind him a promise to return in the night. The horse was fresh, and choosing his own gait, sped swiftly. The eyes of the clambering vines winked at the rider from the garden fences on the way. There was nothing else to see him, nor child nor woman nor man. Through the rocky float in the hollows of the road the agate hoofs drummed, ringing like cups of steel, but without notice from any stranger. In the houses past there were no tenants. The fires by the tent doors were out. The road was deserted, for this was the first Passover Eve, and the hour between the evenings when the visiting millions crowded the city, and the slaughter of lambs in offering reeked the forecourts of the temple, and the priests in ordered lines caught the flowing blood and carried it swiftly to the dripping altars, when all was haste and hurry, racing with the stars fast coming with the signal after which the roasting and the eating and the singing might go on, but not the preparation more. Through the great northern gate the rider rode, and lo! Jerusalem before the fall, in ripeness of glory, illuminated for the Lord. Chapter 6. Ben-Hur alighted at the gate of the khan from which the three wise men more than 30 years before departed, going down to Bethlehem. There, in keeping of his Arab followers, he left the horse, and shortly after was at the wicket of his father's house, and in a yet briefer space in the great chamber. He called for Malach first. That worthy being out, he sent a salutation to his friends the merchant and the Egyptian. They were being carried abroad to see the celebration. The latter, he was informed, was very feeble, and in a state of deep dejection. Young people of that time who were supposed hardly to know their own hearts indulged the habit of politic indirection, quite as much as young people in the same condition indulge it in this time. So when Ben-Hur inquired for the good Balthazar, and with grave courtesy desired to know if he would be pleased to see him, he really addressed the daughter a notice of his arrival. While the servant was answering for the elder, the curtain of the doorway was drawn aside, and the younger Egyptian came in, and walked, or floated, upborne in a white cloud of the gauzy raiment she so loved and lived in, to the center of the chamber, where the light cast by lamps from the seven-armed brazen stick planted upon the floor was the strongest. With her there was no fear of light. The servant left the two alone. In the excitement occasioned by the events of the few days past Ben-Hur had scarcely given a thought to the fair Egyptian. If she came to his mind at all, it was merely as a briefest pleasure, a suggestion of a delight which could wait for him, and was waiting. But now the influence of the woman revived with all its force the instant Ben-Hur beheld her. He advanced to her eagerly, but stopped and gazed. Such a change he had never seen. Theretofore she had been a lover studious to win him, in manner all warmth, each glance an admission, each action an avowal. She had showered him with incense of flattery. While he was present, she had impressed him with her admiration. Going away, he carried the impression with him to remain, a delicious expectancy hastening his return. It was for him the painted eyelids drooped lowest over the lustrous almond eyes. For him the love stories caught from the professionals abounding in the streets of Alexandria were repeated with emphasis and lavishment of poetry. For him endless exclamations of sympathy, and smiles, and little privileges with hand and hair and cheek and lips, and songs of the Nile, and displays of jewelry, and subtleties of lace and veils and scarves, and other subtleties not less exquisite in flosses of Indian silk. The idea, old as the oldest of peoples, that beauty is the reward of the hero had never such realism as she contrived for his pleasure, insomuch that he could not doubt he was her hero. She avouched it in 1,000 artful ways, as natural with her as her beauty, winsome ways reserved, it would seem, by the passionate genius of old Egypt for its daughters. Such the Egyptian had been to Ben-Hur from the night of the boat ride on the lake, in the orchard of palms. But now, elsewhere in this volume, the reader may have observed a term of somewhat indefinite meaning used reverently in a sacred connection. We repeat it now with a general application. There are few persons who have not a double nature, the real and the acquired, the latter a kind of addendum resulting from education, which in time often perfects it into a part of the being as unquestionable as the first. Leaving the thought to the thoughtful, we proceed to say that now the real nature of the Egyptian made itself manifest. It was not possible for her to have received a stranger with repulsion more incisive, yet she was apparently as passionless as a statue. Only the small head was a little tilted, the nostrils a little drawn, and the sensuous lower lip pushed the upper the least bit out of its natural curvature. She was the first to speak. "Your coming is timely, O son of Hur," she said, in a voice sharply distinct. "I wish to thank you for hospitality. After tomorrow I may not have the opportunity to do so." Ben-Hur bowed slightly without taking his eyes from her. "I have heard of a custom which the dice players observe with good result among themselves," she continued. "When the game is over, they refer to their tablets and cast up their accounts, then they libate the gods and put a crown upon the happy winner. We have had a game, it has lasted through many days and nights. Why, now that it is at an end, shall not we see to which the chaplet belongs, yet very watchful?" Ben-Hur answered, lightly, "A man may not balk a woman bent on having her way. Tell me," she continued, inclining her head, and permitting the sneer to become positive, "tell me, O Prince of Jerusalem, where is he, that son of the carpenter of Nazareth, and son not less of God, from whom so lately such mighty things were expected?" He waved his hand impatiently, and replied, "I am not his keeper." The beautiful head sank forward yet lower. "Has he broken Rome to pieces?" Again, but with anger, Ben-Hur raised his hand in deprecation. "Where has he seated his capital?" she proceeded. "Cannot I go see his throne and its lions of bronze? And his palace?" He raised the dead, and to such a one, what is it to raise a golden house? He has but to stamp his foot and say the word, and the house is, pillared like Karnak, and wanting nothing. There was by this time slight ground left to believe her playing. The questions were offensive, and her manner pointed with unfriendliness, seeing which, he on his side became more wary, and said, with good humor, "O Egypt, let us wait another day, even another week. For him, the lions, and the palace." She went on without noticing the suggestion. "And how is it I see you in that garb? Such is not the habit of governors in India or vice-kings elsewhere. I saw the satrap of Tehran once, and he wore a turban of silk and a cloak of cloth of gold, and the hilt and scabbard of his sword made me dizzy with their splendor of precious stones. I thought Osiris had lent him a glory from the sun. I fear you have not entered upon your kingdom, the kingdom I was to share with you. The daughter of my wise guest is kinder than she imagines herself. She is teaching me that Isis may kiss a heart without making it better, Ben. Her spoke with cold courtesy, and IRAs, after playing with the pendant solitaire of her necklace of coins, rejoined, "For a Jew, the son of Hur is clever. I saw your dreaming Caesar make his entry into Jerusalem. You told us he would that day proclaim himself king of the Jews from the steps of the temple. I beheld the procession descend the mountain bringing him. I heard their singing. They were beautiful with palms in motion. I looked everywhere among them for a figure with a promise of royalty, a horseman in purple, a chariot with a driver in shining brass, a stately warrior behind an orbed shield, rivaling his spear in stature. I looked for his guard. It would have been pleasant to have seen a prince of Jerusalem, and a cohort of the legions of Galilee." She flung her listener a glance of provoking disdain, then laughed heartily, as if the ludicrousness of the picture in her mind were too strong for contempt. Instead of a Sesostris returning in triumph or a Caesar helmed and sworded, hot, I saw a man with a woman's face and hair, riding an ass's colt, and in tears, the King, the Son of God, the Redeemer of the world. Hot. In spite of himself, Ben-Hur winced. "I did not quit my place, O Prince of Jerusalem," she said, before he could recover. "I did not laugh. I said to myself, wait, in the temple he will glorify himself as becomes a hero about to take possession of the world. I saw him enter the gate of Shushan in the court of the women. I saw him stop and stand before the gate beautiful. There were people with me on the porch and in the courts, and on the cloisters and on the steps of the three sides of the temple there were other people. I will say 1,000,000 of people, all waiting breathlessly to hear his proclamation. The pillars were not more still than we. Hot. I fancied I heard the axles of the mighty Roman machine begin to crack. Hot. O Prince, by the soul of Solomon, your king of the world drew his gown about him and walked away, and out by the farthest gate, nor opened his mouth to say a word, and the Roman machine is running yet, in simple homage to a hope that instant lost, a hope which, as it began to fall and while it was falling, he unconsciously followed with a parting look down to its disappearance. Ben-Hur lowered his eyes. At no previous time, whether when Balthasar was plying him with arguments, or when miracles were being done before his face, had the disputed nature of the Nazarene been so plainly set before him. The best way, after all, to reach an understanding of the divine is by study of the human. In the things superior to men we may always look to find God. So with the picture given by the Egyptian of the scene, when the Nazarene turned from the gate beautiful, its central theme was an act utterly beyond performance by a man under control of merely human inspirations. A parable to a parable-loving people, it taught what the Christ had so often asserted, that his mission was not political. There was not much more time for thought of all this than that allowed for a common respiration. Yet the idea took fast hold of Ben-Hur, and in the same instant he followed his hope of vengeance out of sight, and the man with the woman's face and hair, and in tears, came near to him, near enough to leave something of his spirit behind. "Daughter of Balthasar," he said, with dignity, "if this be the game of which you spoke to me, take the chaplet, I accord it yours. Only let us make an end of words, that you have a purpose I am sure. To it, I pray, and I will answer you, then let us go our several ways, and forget we ever met. Say on, I will listen, but not to more of that which you have given me." She regarded him intently a moment, as if determining what to do. Possibly she might have been measuring his will. Then she said, coldly, "You have my leave. Go, peace to you," he responded, and walked away. As he was about passing out of the door, she called to him, a word. He stopped where he was, and looked back. "Consider all I know about you, O most fair Egyptian," he said, returning. "What all do you know about me?" She looked at him absently. "You are more of a Roman, son of Hur, than any of your Hebrew brethren. Am I so unlike my countrymen?" he asked, indifferently. "The demigods are all Roman now," she rejoined. "And therefore you will tell me what more you know about me. The likeness is not lost upon me. It might induce me to save you. Save me." The pink-stained fingers toyed daintily with the lustrous pendant at the throat, and her voice was exceeding low and soft. Only a tapping on the floor with her silken sandal admonished him to have a care. There was a Jew, an escaped galley slave, Who killed a man in the palace of Idroni? She began, slowly. Ben-Hur was startled. The same Jew slew a Roman soldier before the marketplace here in Jerusalem. The same Jew has 3 trained legions from Galilee to seize the Roman governor tonight. The same Jew has alliances perfected for war upon Rome, and Ildarim the sheik is one of his partners. Drawing nearer him, she almost whispered, "You have lived in Rome. Suppose these things repeated in years we know of." "Ah, you change color." He drew back from her with somewhat of the look which may be imagined upon the face of a man who, thinking to play with a kitten, has run upon a tiger, and she proceeded. "You are acquainted in the antechamber, and know the Lord Sejanus. Suppose it were told him with the proofs in hand, or without the proofs, that the same Jew is the richest man in the East, nay, in all the empire. The fishes of the Tiber would have fattening other than that they dig out of its ooze, would they not? And while they were feeding, son of her, what splendor there would be on exhibition in the circus. Amusing the Roman people is a fine art, getting the money to keep them amused is another art even finer. And was there ever an artist the equal of the Lord Sejanus?" Ben-Hur was not too much stirred by the evident baseness of the woman for recollection. Not unfrequently when all the other faculties are numb, and failing memory does its offices with the greatest fidelity. The scene at the spring on the way to the Jordan reproduced itself, and he remembered thinking then that Esther had betrayed him. And thinking so now, he said calmly as he could, "To give you pleasure, daughter of Egypt, I acknowledge your cunning, and that I am at your mercy. It may also please you to hear me acknowledge I have no hope of your favor. I could kill you, but you are a woman. The desert is open to receive me, and though Rome is a good hunter of men, there she would follow long and far before she caught me. For in its heart there are wildernesses of spears as well as wildernesses of sand, and it is not unlovely to the unconquered Parthian. In the toils as I am, duped that I have been, yet there is one thing I do. Who told you all you know about me? In flight or captivity, dying even, there will be consolation in leaving the traitor the curse of a man who has lived knowing nothing but wretchedness. Who told you all you know about me? It might have been a touch of art, or might have been sincere, that as it may, the expression of the Egyptian's face became sympathetic. There are in my country, O son of her, she said, presently, workmen who make pictures by gathering vari-colored shells here and there on the seashore after storms, and cutting them up, and patching the pieces as in laying on marble slabs. Can you not see the hint there is in the practice to such as go searching for secrets? Enough that from this person I gathered a handful of little circumstances, and from that other yet another handful, and that after a while I put them together, and was happy as a woman can be who has at disposal the fortune and life of a man whom—" She stopped, and beat the floor with her foot, and looked away as if to hide a sudden emotion from him. With an air of even painful resolution she presently finished the sentence, "Whom she is at loss what to do with." "No, it is not enough," Ben-Hur said, unmoved by the play. "It is not enough. Tomorrow you will determine what to do with me. I may die." "True," she rejoined quickly and with emphasis. "I had something from Sheik Ildarim as he lay with my father in a grove out in the desert. The night was still, very still, and the walls of the tent, sooth to say, were forward against ears outside listening to birds and beetles flying through the air." She smiled at the conceit, but proceeded, "Some other things, bits of shell for the picture, I had from—" "Whom?" "The son of her himself." "Was there no other who contributed?" "No, not one." Her drew a breath of relief, and said, lightly, "Thanks. It were not well to keep the Lord Sejanus waiting for you. The desert is not so sensitive. Again, O Egypt, peace." To this time he had been standing uncovered. Now he took the handkerchief from his arm where it had been hanging, and adjusting it upon his head, turned to depart. But she arrested him. In her eagerness, she even reached a hand to him. "Stay," she said. He looked back at her, but without taking the hand, though it was very noticeable for its sparkling of jewels. And he knew by her manner that the reserved point of the scene, which was so surprising to him, was now to come. "Stay, and do not distrust me, O son of her, if I declare I know why the noble Arius took you for his heir, and, by Isis, by all the gods of Egypt, I swear I tremble to think of you, so brave and generous, under the hand of the remorseless minister. You have left a portion of your youth in the atria of the great capital. Consider, as I do, what the desert will be to you in contrast of life. Oh, I give you pity, pity, and if you but do what I say, I will save you. That, also, I swear, by our holy Isis, words of entreaty and prayer these, poured forth volubly and with earnestness and the mighty sanction of beauty. Almost I believe you, Ben-Hur said, yet hesitatingly, and in a voice low and indistinct, for a doubt remained with him grumbling against the yielding tendency of the man. A good sturdy doubt, such a one as has saved many a life and fortune. The perfect life for a woman is to live in love, the greatest happiness for a man is the conquest of himself. And that, O Prince, is what I have to ask of you. She spoke rapidly, and with animation. Indeed, she had never appeared to him so fascinating. You had once a friend, she continued. It was in your boyhood. There was a quarrel, and you and he became enemies. He did you wrong. After many years you met him again in the circus at Antioch. Masala, yes, Masala. You are his creditor. Forgive the past, admit him to friendship again, restore the fortune he lost in the great wager, rescue him. The 6 talents are as nothing to you, not so much as a bud lost upon a tree already in full leaf. But to him, he must go about with a broken body. Wherever you meet him he must look up to you from the ground. O Ben-Hur, noble prince, to a Roman descended as he is, beggary is the other most odious name for death. Save him from beggary. If the rapidity with which she spoke was a cunning invention to keep him from thinking, either she never knew or else had forgotten that there are convictions which derive nothing from thought, but drop into place without leave or notice. It seemed to him, when at last she paused to have his answer, that he could see Masala himself peering at him over her shoulder, and in its expression the countenance of the Roman was not that of a mendicant or a friend. The sneer was as patrician as ever, and the fine edge of the hauteur as flawless and irritating. The appeal has been decided then, and for once a Masala takes nothing. I must go and write it in my book of great occurrences, a judgment by a Roman against a Roman. But did Masala send you to me with this request, O Egypt? He has a noble nature, and judged you by it. Ben-Hur took the hand upon arm. As you know him in such friendly way, fair Egyptian, tell me, would he do for me, there being a reversal of the conditions that he asks of me? Answer, by Isis. Answer, for the truth's sake. There was insistence in the touch of his hand, and in his look also. Oh, she began, he is a Roman, you were about to say, meaning that I, a Jew, must not determine dues from me to him by any measure of dues from him to me. Being a Jew, I must forgive him my winnings because he is a Roman. If you have more to tell me, daughter of Balthazar, speak quickly, quickly, for by the Lord God of Israel, when this heat of blood, hotter waxing, attains its highest, I may not be able longer to see that you are a woman, and beautiful. I may see but the spy of a master the more hateful, because the master is a Roman. Say on, and quickly. She threw his hand off and stepped back into the full light, with all the evil of her nature collected in her eyes and voice. Thou drinker of lees, feeder upon husks, to think I could love thee, having seen Masala, such as thou were born to serve him. He would have been satisfied with release of the 6 talents, but I say to the 6 thou shalt add 20, dost thou hear? The kissings of my little finger which thou hast taken from him, though with my consent, shall be paid for, and that I have followed thee with affection of sympathy, and endured thee so long. Enter into the account not less because I was serving him. The merchant here is thy keeper of moneys. If by tomorrow at noon, he has not by order acted upon in favor of my Masala for 26 talents, mark the sum, thou shalt settle with the Lord Sejanus. Be wise and, farewell. As she was going to the door, he put himself in her way. The old Egypt lives in you, he said. Whether you see Masala tomorrow or the next day, here or in Rome, give him this message. Tell him I have back the money, even the 6 talents he robbed me of by robbing my father's estate. Tell him I survived the galleys to which he had me sent, and in my strength rejoice in his beggary and dishonor. Tell him I think the affliction of body, which he is from my hand, is the curse of our Lord God of Israel upon him more fit than death for his crimes against the helpless. Tell him my mother and sister whom he had sent to a cell in Antonia, that they might die of leprosy, are alive and well, thanks to the power of the Nazarene whom you so despise. Tell him that, to fill my measure of happiness, they are restored to me, and that I will go hence to their love, and find in it more than compensation for the impure passions which you leave me to take to him. Tell him this for your comfort, O cunning incarnate, as much as this. Tell him that when the Lord Sejanus comes to despoil me he will find nothing, for the inheritance I had from the Duumvir, including the villa by Misenum, has been sold, and the money from the sale is out of reach, afloat in the marts of the world as bills of exchange, and that this house and the goods and merchandise, and the ships and caravans with which Simonides plies his commerce with such princely profits, are covered by imperial safeguards, a wise head having found the price of the favor, and the Lord Sejanus preferring a reasonable gain in the way of gift to much gain fished from pools of blood and wrong. Tell him if all this were not so, if the money and property were all mine, yet should he not have the least part of it, for when he finds our Jewish bills, and forces them to give up their values, there is yet another resort left me, a deed of gift to Caesar. So much, O Egypt, I found out in the atria of the great capital. Tell him that along with my defiance I do not send him a curse in words, but, as a better expression of my undying hate, I send him one who will prove to him the sum of all curses, and when he looks at you repeating this my message, daughter of Balthazar, his Roman shrewdness will tell him all I mean. Go now, and I will go. He conducted her to the door, and, with ceremonious politeness, held back the curtain while she passed out. Peace to you, he said, as she disappeared. Chapter 7. When Ben-Hur left the guest chamber, there was not nearly so much life in his action as when he entered it. His steps were slower, and he went along with his head quite upon his breast. Having made discovery that a man with a broken back may yet have a sound brain, he was reflecting upon the discovery, for as much as it is easy after a calamity has befallen to look back and see the proofs of its coming strewn along the way, the thought that he had not even suspected the Egyptianess in Messala's interest, but had gone blindly on through whole years putting himself and his friends more and more at her mercy, was a sore wound to the young man's vanity. I remember, he said to himself, she had no word of indignation for the perfidious Roman at the fountain of Castalia. I remember she extolled him at the boat ride on the lake in the orchard of palms, and, he stopped and beat his left hand violently with his right. That mystery about the appointment she made with me at the palace of Iderne is no mystery now. The wound, it should be observed, was to his vanity, and fortunately it is not often that people die of such hurts, or even continue a long time sick. In Ben-Hur's case, moreover, there was a compensation, for presently he exclaimed aloud, "Praised be the Lord God that the woman took not a more lasting hold on me. I see I did not love her." Then, as if he had already parted with not a little of the weight on his mind, he stepped forward more lightly, and, coming to the place on the terrace where one stairway led down to the courtyard below, and another ascended to the roof, he took the ladder and began to climb. As he made the last step in the flight he stopped again. Can Balthazar have been her partner in the long mask she has been playing? No, no. Hypocrisy seldom goes with wrinkled age like that. Balthazar is a good man. With this decided opinion he stepped upon the roof. There was a full moon overhead, yet the vault of the sky at the moment was lurid with light cast up from the fires burning in the streets and open places of the city, and the chanting and chorusing of the old psalmody of Israel filled it with plaintive harmonies, to which he could not but listen. The countless voices bearing the burden seemed to say, "Thus, O son of Judah, we prove our worshipfulness of the Lord God, and our loyalty to the land he gave us. Let a Gideon appear, or a David, or a Maccabeus, and we are ready." That seemed an introduction, for next he saw the man of Nazareth. In certain moods the mind is disposed to mock itself with inapposite fancies. The tearful woman-like face of the Christ stayed with him, while he crossed the roof to the parapet above the street on the north side of the house, and there was in it no sign of war, but rather as the heavens of calm evenings look peace upon everything, so it looked, provoking the old question, what manner of man is he? Ben-Hur permitted himself one glance over the parapet, then turned and walked mechanically towards the summer house. "Let them do their worst," he said, as he went slowly on. "I will not forgive the Roman. I will not divide my fortune with him, nor will I fly from this city of my fathers. I will call on Galilee first, and here make the fight. By brave deeds I will bring the tribes to our side. He who raised up Moses will find us a leader. If I fail, if not the Nazarene, then some other of the many ready to die for freedom." The interior of the summer house, when Ben-Hur, slow sauntering, came to it, was murkily lighted. The faintest of shadows lay along the floor from the pillars on the north and west sides. Looking in, he saw the armchair usually occupied by Simonides drawn to a spot from which a view of the city over towards the marketplace could be best had. "The good man is returned. I will speak with him, unless he be asleep." He walked in, and with a quiet step approached the chair. Peering over the high back, he beheld Esther nestled in the seat asleep, a small figure snugged away under her father's lap robe. The hair disheveled fell over her face. Her breathing was low and irregular. Once it was broken by a long sigh, ending in a sob. Something, it might have been the sigh or the loneliness in which he found her, imparted to him the idea that the sleep was a rest from sorrow rather than fatigue. Nature kindly sends such relief to children, and he was used to thinking Esther scarcely more than a child. He put his arms upon the back of the chair, and thought, "I will not wake her. I have nothing to tell her, nothing unless it be my love. She is a daughter of Judah, and beautiful, and so unlike the Egyptian. For there it is all vanity, here all truth, their ambition, here duty, their selfishness, here self-sacrifice. Nay, the question is not do I love her, but does she love me? She was my friend from the beginning. The night on the terrace at Antioch, how childlike she begged me not to make Rome my enemy, and had me tell her of the villa by Misenum, and of the life there, that she should not see I saw her cunning drift. I kissed her. Can she have forgotten the kiss? I have not. I love her. They do not know in the city that I have back my people. I shrank from telling it to the Egyptian, but this little one will rejoice with me over their restoration, and welcome them with love and sweet services of hand and heart. She will be to my mother another daughter, in tears as she will find her other self. I would wake her and tell her these things, but, out on the sorceress of Egypt, of that folly I could not command myself to speak. I will go away, and wait another and a better time. I will wait. Fair Esther, dutiful child, daughter of Judah." He retired silently as he came. Chapter 8. The streets were full of people going and coming, or grouped about the fires roasting meat, and feasting and singing, and happy. The odor of scorching flesh mixed with the odor of cedar wood aflame and smoking loaded the air, and as this was the occasion when every son of Israel was full brother to every other son of Israel, and hospitality was without bounds, Ben-Hur was saluted at every step, while the groups by the fires insisted, "Stay and partake with us. We are brethren in the love of the Lord." But with thanks to them he hurried on, intending to take horse at the Khan and return to the tents on the Cedron. To make the place, it was necessary for him to cross the thoroughfare so soon to receive sorrowful Christian perpetuation. There also the pious celebration was at its height. Looking up the street, he noticed the flames of torches in motion streaming out like pennons. Then he observed that the singing ceased where the torches came. His wonder rose to its highest, however, when he became certain that amidst the smoke and dancing sparks, he saw the keener sparkling of burnished spear tips, arguing the presence of Roman soldiers. What were they, the scoffing legionaries, doing in a Jewish religious procession? The circumstance was unheard of, and he stayed to see the meaning of it. The moon was shining its best, yet, as if the moon and the torches, and the fires in the street, and the rays streaming from windows and open doors were not enough to make the way clear, some of the processionists carried lighted lanterns, and fancying he discovered a special purpose in the use of such equipments, Ben-Hur stepped into the street so close to the line of march as to bring every one of the company under view while passing. The torches and the lanterns were being borne by servants, each of whom was armed with a bludgeon or a sharpened stave. Their present duty seemed to be to pick out the smoothest paths among the rocks in the street for certain dignitaries among them, elders and priests, rabbis with long beards, heavy brows, and beaked noses, men of the class potential in the councils of Caiaphas and Hannas. Where could they be going? Not to the temple, certainly, for the route to the sacred house from Zion, whence these appeared to be coming, was by the Zistas, and their business, if peaceful, why the soldiers? As the procession began to go by Ben-Hur, his attention was particularly called to three persons walking together. They were well towards the front, and the servants who went before them with lanterns appeared unusually careful in the service. In the person moving on the left of this group, he recognized the chief policeman of the temple. The one on the right was a priest. The middle man was not at first so easily placed, as he walked leaning heavily upon the arms of the others, and carried his head so low upon his breast as to hide his face. His appearance was that of a prisoner not yet recovered from the fright of arrest, or being taken to something dreadful, to torture or death. The dignitaries helping him on the right and left, and the attention they gave him, made it clear that if he were not himself the object moving the party, he was at least in some way connected with the object, a witness or a guide, possibly an informer. So if it could be found who he was, the business in hand might be shrewdly guessed. With great assurance, Ben-Hur fell in on the right of the priest, and walked along with him. Now if the man would lift his head. And presently he did so, letting the light of the lantern strike full in his face. Pale, dazed, pinched with dread, the beard roughed, the eyes filmy, sunken, and despairing, in much going about following the Nazarene, Ben-Hur had come to know his disciples as well as the Master, and now, at sight of the dismal countenance, he cried out. The chariot, slowly the head of the man turned until his eyes settled upon Ben-Hur, and his lips moved as if he were about to speak, but the priest interfered. Who art thou? Begone, he said to Ben-Hur, pushing him away. The young man took the push good-naturedly, and, waiting an opportunity, fell into the procession again. Thus he was carried passively along down the street, through the crowded lowlands between the hill Bizeppa and the castle of Antonia, and on by the Bethesda reservoir to the sheep gate. There were people everywhere, and everywhere the people were engaged in sacred observances. It being Passover night, the valves of the gate stood open. The keepers were off somewhere feasting. In front of the procession as it passed out unchallenged was the deep gorge of the Cedron, with Olivet beyond, its dressing of cedar and olive trees darker of the moonlight silvering all the heavens. Two roads met and merged into the street at the gate, one from the northeast, the other from Bethany. Ere Ben-Hur could finish wondering whether he were to go farther, and if so, which road was to be taken, he was led off down into the gorge. And still no hint of the purpose of the midnight march. Down the gorge and over the bridge at the bottom of it, there was a great clatter on the floor as the crowd, now a straggling rabble, passed over beating and pounding with their clubs and staves. A little farther, and they turned off to the left in the direction of an olive orchard, enclosed by a stone wall in view from the road. Ben-Hur knew there was nothing in the place but old gnarled trees, the grass, and a trough hewn out of a rock for the treading of oil after the fashion of the country. While, yet more wonderstruck, he was thinking what could bring such a company at such an hour to a quarter so lonesome, they were all brought to a standstill. Voices called out excitedly in front, a chill sensation ran from man to man. There was a rapid falling back, and a blind stumbling over each other. The soldiers alone kept their order. It took Ben-Hur but a moment to disengage himself from the mob and run forward. There he found a gateway without a gate admitting to the orchard, and he halted to take in the scene. A man in white clothes, and bareheaded, was standing outside the entrance, his hands crossed before him. A slender, stooping figure, with long hair and thin face, in an attitude of resignation and waiting. It was the Nazarene. Behind him, next the gateway, were the disciples in a group. They were excited, but no man was ever calmer than he. The torchlight beat redly upon him, giving his hair a tint ruddier than was natural to it, yet the expression of the countenance was as usual all gentleness and pity. Opposite this most unmartial figure stood the rabble, gaping, silent, awed, cowering, ready at a sign of anger from him to break and run, and from him to them. Then at Judas, conspicuous in their midst, Ben-Hur looked. One quick glance, and the object of the visit lay open to his understanding. Here was the betrayer, there the betrayed, and these with clubs and staves, and the legionaries were brought to take him. A man may not always tell what he will do until the trial is upon him. This was the emergency for which Ben-Hur had been for years preparing. The man to whose security he had devoted himself, and upon whose life he had been building so largely, was in personal peril, yet he stood still. Such contradictions are there in human nature. To say truth, O reader, he was not entirely recovered from the picture of the Christ before the gate beautiful, as it had been given by the Egyptian, and, besides that, the very calmness with which the mysterious person confronted the mob held him in restraint by suggesting the possession of a power in reserve, more than sufficient for the peril. Peace and goodwill and love and non-resistance had been the burden of the Nazarene's teaching. Would he put his preaching into practice? He was master of life, he could restore it when lost, he could take it at pleasure. What use would he make of the power now? Defend himself? And how? A word, a breath, a thought were sufficient. That there would be some signal exhibition of astonishing force beyond the natural Ben-Hur believed, and in that faith waited. And in all this he was still measuring the Nazarene by himself, by the human standard. Presently the clear voice of the Christ arose. Whom seek ye? Jesus of Nazareth, the priest replied. I am he. At these simplest of words, spoken without passion or alarm, the assailants fell back several steps, the timid among them cowering to the ground. And they might have let him alone and gone away had not Judas walked over to him. Hail, Master, with this friendly speech he kissed him. Judas, said the Nazarene, mildly, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? Wherefore art thou come? Receiving no reply, the Master spoke to the crowd again. Whom seek ye? Jesus of Nazareth, I have told you that I am he. If, therefore, you seek me, let these go their way. At these words of entreaty the rabbis advanced upon him, and, seeing their intent, some of the disciples for whom he interceded drew nearer. One of them cut off a man's ear, but without saving the Master from being taken. And yet Ben-Hur stood still. Nay, while the officers were making ready with their ropes, the Nazarene was doing his greatest charity, not the greatest indeed, but the very greatest in illustration of his forbearance, so far surpassing that of men. Suffer ye thus far, he said to the wounded man, and healed him with a touch. Both friends and enemies were confounded, one side that he could do such a thing, the other that he would do it under the circumstances. Surely he will not allow them to bind him, thus thought Ben-Hur. Put up thy sword into the sheath, the cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? From the offending follower, the Nazarene turned to his captors. Are you come out as against a thief, with swords and staves to take me? I was daily with you in the temple, and you took me not, but this is your hour, and the power of darkness. The posse plucked up courage and closed about him. And when Ben-Hur looked for the faithful, they were gone. Not one of them remained. The crowd about the deserted man seemed very busy with tongue, hand, and foot. Over their heads, between the torch sticks, through the smoke, sometimes in openings between the restless men, Ben-Hur caught momentary glimpses of the prisoner. Never had anything struck him as so piteous, so unfriended, so forsaken. Yet, he thought, the man could have defended himself, he could have slain his enemies with a breath, but he would not. What was the cup his father had given him to drink, and who was the father to be so obeyed? Mystery upon mystery, not one, but many. Directly the mob started in return to the city, the soldiers in the lead. Ben-Hur became anxious. He was not satisfied with himself. Where the torches were in the midst of the rabble, he knew the Nazarene was to be found. Suddenly he resolved to see him again. He would ask him one question. Taking off his long outer garment and a handkerchief from his head, he threw them upon the orchard wall, and started after the posse, which he boldly joined. Through the stragglers he made way, and by littles at length reached the man who carried the ends of the rope, with which the prisoner was bound. The Nazarene was walking slowly, his head down, his hands bound behind him. The hair fell thickly over his face, and he stooped more than usual. Apparently he was oblivious to all going on around him. In advance a few steps were priests and elders talking and occasionally looking back. When, at length, they were all near the bridge in the gorge, Ben-Hur took the rope from the servant who had it and stepped past him. "Master, master," he said, hurriedly, speaking close to the Nazarene's ear. "Dost thou hear, master? A word, one word. Tell me." The fellow from whom he had taken the rope now claimed it. "Tell me," Ben-Hur continued, "goest thou with these of thine own accord?" The people were come up now, and in his own ears asking angrily, "Who art thou, man?" "O master," Ben-Hur made haste to say, his voice sharp with anxiety, "I am thy friend and lover. Tell me, I pray thee, if I bring rescue, wilt thou accept it?" The Nazarene never so much as looked up or allowed the slightest sign of recognition. Yet the something which when we are suffering is always telling it to such as look at us, though they be strangers, failed not now. Let him alone, it seemed to say, he has been abandoned by his friends, the world has denied him. In bitterness of spirit, he has taken farewell of men, he is going he knows not where, and he cares not. Let him alone, and to that Ben-Hur was now driven. A dozen hands were upon him, and from all sides there was shouting, "He is one of them. Bring him along, club him, kill him." With a gust of passion which gave him many times his ordinary force, Ben-Hur raised himself, turned once about with arms outstretched, shook the hands off, and rushed through the circle which was fast hemming him in. The hands snatching at him as he passed tore his garments from his back, so he ran off the road naked, and the gorge, in keeping of the friendly darkness, darker there than elsewhere, received him safe. Reclaiming his handkerchief and outer garments from the orchard wall, he followed back to the city gate. Thence he went to the khan, and on the good horse rode to the tents of his people out by the tombs of the kings. As he rode, he promised himself to see the Nazarene on the morrow, promised it, not knowing that the unfriended man was taken straightway to the house of Hannas to be tried that night. The heart the young man carried to his couch beat so heavily he could not sleep, for now clearly his renewed Judean kingdom resolved itself into what it was, only a dream. It is bad enough to see our castles overthrown one after another with an interval between in which to recover from the shock, or at least let the echoes of the fall die away, but when they go all together, go as ships sink, as houses tumble in earthquakes. The spirits which endure it calmly are made of stuff sterner than common, and Ben-Hur's was not of them. Through vistas in the future, he began to catch glimpses of a life serenely beautiful, with a home instead of a palace of state, and Esther its mistress. Again and again through the leaden-footed hours of the night he saw the villa by Misenum, and with his little countrywoman strolled through the garden, and rested in the paneled atrium. Overhead a Neapolitan sky, at their feet the sunniest of sun, lands and the bluest of bays. In plainest speech, he was entering upon a crisis with which tomorrow and the Nazarene will have everything to do. Chapter 9. Next morning, about the second hour, two men rode full speed to the doors of Ben-Hur's tents, and dismounting, asked to see him. He was not yet risen, but gave directions for their admission. "Peace to you, brethren," he said, for they were of his Galileans and trusted officers. "Will you be seated?" "Nay," the senior replied, bluntly, "to sit and be at ease is to let the Nazarene die. Rise, son of Judah, and go with us. The judgment has been given. The tree of the cross is already at Golgotha." Ben-Hur stared at them. The cross was all he could for the moment say. "They took him last night and tried him," the man continued. "At dawn they led him before Pilate. Twice the Roman denied his guilt, twice he refused to give him over. At last he washed his hands, and said, 'Be it upon you then,' and they answered." "Who answered?" "They, the priests and people." "His blood be upon us and our children." "Holy Father Abraham," cried Ben-Hur, "a Roman kinder to an Israelite than his own kin, and if he should indeed be the Son of God, what shall ever wash his blood from their children? It must not be. 'Tis time to fight." His face brightened with resolution, and he clapped his hands. "The horses!" And quickly, he said to the Arab who answered the signal, "And bid Amr send me fresh garments, and bring my sword. It is time to die for Israel, my friends. Tarry without till I come." He ate a crust, drank a cup of wine, and was soon upon the road. "Whither would you go first?" asked the Galilean. "To collect the legions, Alice," the man replied, throwing up his hands. "Why, alas, master," the man spoke with shame. "Master? I and my friend here are all that are faithful. The rest do follow the priests, seeking what? And Ben-Hur drew rein. To kill him, not the Nazarene. You have said it. Ben-Hur looked slowly from one man to the other. He was hearing again the question of the night before. The cup my father hath given me, shall I not drink it? In the ear of the Nazarene he was putting his own question. If I bring thee rescue, wilt thou accept it? He was saying to himself, this death may not be averted. The man has been traveling towards it with full knowledge from the day he began his mission. It is imposed by a will higher than his, whose but the Lord's. If he is consenting, if he goes to it voluntarily, what shall another do? Nor less did Ben-Hur see the failure of the scheme he had built upon the fidelity of the Galileans. Their desertion, in fact, left nothing more of it. But how singular it should happen that morning of all others. A dread seized him. It was possible his scheming and labor and expenditure of treasure might have been but blasphemous contention with God. When he picked up the reins and said, "Let us go," brethren, all before him was uncertainty. The faculty of resolving quickly, without which one cannot be a hero in the midst of stirring scenes, was numb within him. Let us go, brethren, let us to Golgotha. They passed through excited crowds of people going south, like themselves. All the country north of the city seemed aroused and in motion. Hearing that the procession with the condemned might be met with somewhere near the great white towers left by Herod, the three friends rode thither, passing round southeast of Acre. In the valley below the pool of Hezekiah, passageway against the multitude became impossible, and they were compelled to dismount and take shelter behind the corner of a house and wait. The waiting was as if they were on the river bank, watching a flood go by, for such the people seemed. There are certain chapters in the first book of this story, which were written to give the reader an idea of the composition of the Jewish nationality, as it was in the time of Christ. They were also written in anticipation of this hour and scene, so that he who has read them with attention can now see all Ben-Hur saw of the going to the crucifixion, a rare and wonderful sight. Half an hour, the flood surged by Ben-Hur and his companions, within arm's reach, incessant, undiminished. At the end of that time he could have said, I have seen all the castes of Jerusalem, all the sects of Judea, all the tribes of Israel, and all the nationalities of earth represented by them. The Libyan Jew went by, and a Jew of Egypt, and a Jew from the Rhine, in short, Jews from all east countries and all west countries, and all islands within commercial connection. They went by on foot, on horseback, on camels, in litters and chariots, and with an infinite variety of costumes, yet with the same marvelous similitude of features which today particularizes the children of Israel. Tried as they have been by climates and modes of life, they went by speaking all known tongues, for by that means only were they distinguishable group from group. They went by in haste, eager, anxious, crowding, all to behold one poor Nazarene die, a felon between felons. These were the many, but they were not all. Borne along with the stream were thousands not Jews, thousands hating and despising them. Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Syrians, Africans, Egyptians, Easterns, so that, studying the Mass, it seemed the whole world was to be represented, and, in that sense, present at the crucifixion. The going was singularly quiet, a hoof stroke upon a rock, the glide and rattle of revolving wheels, voices in conversation, and now and then a calling voice, were all the sounds heard above the rustle of the mighty movement. Yet was there upon every countenance the look with which men make haste to see some dreadful sight, some sudden wreck, or ruin, or calamity of war, and by such signs Ben-Hur judged that these were the strangers in the city come up to the Passover, who had had no part in the trial of the Nazarene, and might be his friends. At length, from the direction of the great towers, Ben-Hur heard, at first faint in the distance, a shouting of many men. "Hark, they are coming now," said one of his friends. The people in the street halted to hear, but as the cry rang on over their heads, they looked at each other, and in shuddering silence moved along. The shouting drew nearer each moment, and the air was already full of it and trembling, when Ben-Hur saw the servants of Simonides coming with their master in his chair, and Esther walking by his side. A covered litter was next behind them. "Peace to you, O Simonides, and to you, Esther," said Ben-Hur, meeting them. If you are for Golgotha, stay until the procession passes, I will then go with you. There is room to turn in by the house here." The merchant's large head rested heavily upon his breast. Rousing himself, he answered, "Speak to Balthazar, his pleasure will be mine." "He is in the litter." Ben-Hur hastened to draw aside the curtain. The Egyptian was lying within, his wan face so pinched as to appear like a dead man's. The proposal was submitted to him. "Can we see him?" he inquired, faintly. "The Nazarene? Yes, he must pass within a few feet of us." "Dear Lord," the old man cried, fervently, once more, once more. "Oh, it is a dreadful day for the world." Shortly the whole party were in waiting under shelter of the house. They said but little, afraid, probably, to trust their thoughts to each other. Everything was uncertain, and nothing so much so as opinions. Balthazar drew himself feebly from the litter, and stood supported by a servant. Esther and Ben-Hur kept Simonides company. Meantime the flood poured along, if anything, more densely than before, and the shouting came nearer, shrill up in the air, hoarse along the earth, and cruel. At last the procession was up. "See," said Ben-Hur, bitterly, "that which cometh now is Jerusalem." The advance was in possession of an army of boys, hooting and screaming, "The King of the Jews! Room, room for the King of the Jews!" Simonides watched them as they whirled and danced along, like a cloud of summer insects, and said, gravely, "When these come to their inheritance, son of Hur, alas for the city of Solomon." A band of the legionaries fully armed followed next, marching in sturdy indifference, the glory of burnished brass about them the while. Then came the Nazarene. He was nearly dead. Every few steps he staggered as if he would fall. A stained gown badly torn hung from his shoulders over a seamless under tunic. His bare feet left red splotches upon the stones. An inscription on a board was tied to his neck. A crown of thorns had been crushed hard down upon his head, making cruel wounds from which streams of blood, now dry and blackened, had run over his face and neck. The long hair, tangled in the thorns, was clotted thick. The skin, where it could be seen, was ghastly white. His hands were tied before him. Back somewhere in the city he had fallen exhausted under the transverse beam of his cross, which, as a condemned person, custom required him to bear to the place of execution. Now a countryman carried the burden in his stead. 4 soldiers went with him as a guard against the mob, who sometimes, nevertheless, broke through, and struck him with sticks, and spit upon him. Yet no sound escaped him, neither remonstrance nor groan, nor did he look up until he was nearly in front of the house sheltering Ben-Hur and his friends, all of whom were moved with quick compassion. Esther clung to her father, and he, strong of will as he was, trembled. Balthazar fell down speechless. Even Ben-Hur cried out, "Oh my God, my God!" Then, as if he divined their feelings or heard the exclamation, the Nazarene turned his wan face towards the party, and looked at them each one, so they carried the look in memory through life. They could see he was thinking of them, not himself, and the dying eyes gave them the blessing he was not permitted to speak. "Where are thy legions, son of Hur?" asked Simonides, aroused. "Hannes can tell thee better than I." "What, faithless all but these 2? Then all is lost, and this good man must die." The face of the merchant knit convulsively as he spoke, and his head sank upon his breast. He had borne his part in Ben-Hur's labors well, and he had been inspired by the same hopes, now blown out never to be rekindled. 2 other men succeeded the Nazarene bearing crossbeams. "Who are these?" Ben-Hur asked of the Galileans. "Thieves appointed to die with the Nazarene," they replied. Next in the procession stalked a mitred figure clad all in the golden vestments of the high priest. Policemen from the temple curtained him round about, and after him, in order, strode the Sanhedrim, and a long array of priests, the latter in their plain white garments, overwrapped by abnets of many folds and gorgeous colors. "The son-in-law of Hannes," said Ben-Hur, in a low voice. "Caiaphas, I have seen him," Simonides replied, adding, after a pause during which he thoughtfully watched the haughty pontiff, "And now am I convinced, with such assurance as proceeds from clear enlightenment of the Spirit with absolute assurance, now know I that he who first goes yonder with the inscription about his neck is what the inscription proclaims him, King of the Jews." A common man, an impostor, a felon, was never thus waited upon. For look, here are the nations, Jerusalem, Israel. Here is the ephod, here the blue robe with its fringe, and purple pomegranates, and golden bells, not seen in the street since the day Jadua went out to meet the Macedonian. Proves all that this Nazarene is king. Would I could rise and go after him. Ben-Hur listened surprised, and directly, as if himself awakening to his unusual display of feeling, Simonides said, impatiently, speak to Balthazar, I pray you, and let us be gone. The vomit of Jerusalem is coming. Then Esther spoke. I see some women there, and they are weeping. Who are they? Following the pointing of her hand, the party beheld 4 women in tears. One of them leaned upon the arm of a man of aspect not unlike the Nazarenes. Presently Ben-Hur answered, the man is the disciple whom the Nazarene loves the best of all. She who leans upon his arm is Mary, the Master's mother. The others are friendly women of Galilee. Esther pursued the mourners with glistening eyes until the multitude received them out of sight. It may be the reader will fancy the foregoing snatches of conversation were had in quiet, but it was not so. The talking was, for the most part, like that indulged by people at the seaside under the sound of the surf. For to nothing else can the clamor of this division of the mob be so well likened. The demonstration was the forerunner of those in which, scarce 30 years later, under rule of the factions, the holy city was torn to pieces. It was quite as great in numbers, as fanatical and bloodthirsty, boiled and raved, and had in it exactly the same elements, servants, camel drivers, marketmen, gatekeepers, gardeners, dealers in fruits and wines, proselytes, and foreigners not proselytes, watchmen and menials from the temple, thieves, robbers, and the myriad not assignable to any class, but who, on such occasions as this, appeared no one could say whence, hungry and smelling of caves and old tombs, bareheaded wretches with naked arms and legs, hair and beard in uncombed mats, and each with one garment the color of clay, beasts with abysmal mouths, in outcry effective as lions calling each other across desert spaces. Some of them had swords, a greater number flourished spears and javelins, though the weapons of the many were staves and knotted clubs, and slings, for which latter selected stones were stored in scrips, and sometimes insects improvised from the foreskirts of their dirty tunics. Among the mass here and there appeared persons of high degree, scribes, elders, rabbis, Pharisees with broad fringing, Sadducees in fine cloaks, serving for the time as prompters and directors. If a throat tired of one cry, they invented another for it. If brassy lungs showed signs of collapse, they set them going again. And yet the clamor, loud and continuous as it was, could have been reduced to a few syllables: King of the Jews, room for the King of the Jews, defiler of the temple, blasphemer of God, crucify him, crucify him. And of these cries the last one seemed in greatest favor, because, doubtless, it was more directly expressive of the wish of the mob, and helped to better articulate its hatred of the Nazarene. Come, said Simonides, when Balthazar was ready to proceed, come, let us forward. Ben-Hur did not hear the call. The appearance of the part of the procession then passing, its brutality and hunger for life, were reminding him of the Nazarene, his gentleness, and the many charities he had seen him do for suffering men. Suggestions beget suggestions, so he remembered suddenly his own great indebtedness to the man, the time he himself was in the hands of a Roman guard going, as was supposed, to a death as certain and almost as terrible as this one of the cross, the cooling drink he had at the well by Nazareth, and the divine expression of the face of him who gave it, the later goodness, the miracle of Palm Sunday, and with these recollections, the thought of his present powerlessness to give back help for help, or make return in kind stung him keenly, and he accused himself. He had not done all he might. He could have watched with the Galileans, and kept them true and ready, and this was the moment to strike. A blow well given now would not merely disperse the mob and set the Nazarene free, it would be a trumpet call to Israel, and precipitate the long-dreamt of war for freedom. The opportunity was going, the minutes were bearing it away, and if lost, God of Abraham, was there nothing to be done? Nothing? That instant a party of Galileans caught his eye. He rushed through the press and overtook them. "Follow me," he said. "I would have speech with you." The men obeyed him, and when they were under shelter of the house, he spoke again. "You are of those who took my swords, and agreed with me to strike for freedom and the king who is coming. You have the swords now, and now is the time to strike with them. Go, look everywhere, and find our brethren, and tell them to meet me at the tree of the cross making ready for the Nazarene. Haste all of you. Nay, stand not so. The Nazarene is the king, and freedom dies with him." They looked at him respectfully, but did not move. "Hear you?" he asked. Then one of them replied, "Son of Judah." By that name they knew him. "Son of Judah, it is you who are deceived, not we or our brethren who have your swords. The Nazarene is not the king, neither has he the spirit of a king. We were with him when he came into Jerusalem. We saw him in the temple. He failed himself, and us, and Israel. At the gate beautiful he turned his back upon God and refused the throne of David. He is not king, and Galilee is not with him. He shall die the death. But hear you, son of Judah, we have your swords, and we are ready now to draw them and strike for freedom, and so is Galilee. Be it for freedom, O son of Judah, for freedom, and we will meet you at the tree of the cross." The sovereign moment of his life was upon Ben-Hur. Could he have taken the offer and said the word, history might have been other than it is, but then it would have been history ordered by men, not God, something that never was, and never will be. A confusion fell upon him, he knew not how, though afterwards he attributed it to the Nazarene. For when the Nazarene was risen, he understood that death was necessary to faith in the resurrection, without which Christianity would be an empty husk. The confusion, as has been said, left him without the faculty of decision. He stood helpless, wordless even. Covering his face with his hand, he shook with the conflict between his wish, which was what he would have ordered, and the power that was upon him. "Come, we are waiting for you," said Simonides, the fourth time. Thereupon he walked mechanically after the chair and the litter. Esther walked with him. Like Balthasar and his friends, the wise men, the day they went to the meeting in the desert, he was being led along the way. Chapter 10. When the party, Balthasar, Simonides, Ben-Hur, Esther, and the two faithful Galileans, reached the place of crucifixion, Ben-Hur was in advance leading them. How they had been able to make way through the great press of excited people, he never knew. No more did he know the road by which they came or the time it took them to come. He had walked in total unconsciousness, neither hearing nor seeing anybody or anything, and without a thought of where he was going, or the ghostliest semblance of a purpose in his mind. In such condition a little child could have done as much as he to prevent the awful crime he was about to witness. The intentions of God are always strange to us, but not more so than the means by which they are wrought out, and at last made plain to our belief. Ben-Hur came to a stop, those following him also stopped. As a curtain rises before an audience, the spell holding him in its sleep awake rose, and he saw with a clear understanding. There was a space upon the top of a low knoll rounded like a skull, and dry, dusty, and without vegetation, except some scrubby hyssop. The boundary of the space was a living wall of men, with men behind struggling, some to look over, others to look through it. An inner wall of Roman soldiery held the dense outer wall rigidly to its place. A centurion kept eye upon the soldiers. Up to the very line so vigilantly guarded Ben-Hur had been led. At the line he now stood, his face to the northwest. The knoll was the old Aramaic Golgotha, in Latin, Calvaria, anglicized, Calvary, translated, the skull. On its slopes, in the low places, on the swells and higher hills, the earth sparkled with a strange enameling. Look where he would outside the walled space, he saw no patch of brown soil, no rock, no green thing. He saw only thousands of eyes and ruddy faces. Off a little way in the perspective only ruddy faces without eyes. Off a little farther only a broad circle, which the nearer view instructed him was also of faces. And this was the ensemble of 3 millions of people, under it 3 millions of hearts throbbing with passionate interest in what was taking place upon a knoll. Indifferent as to the thieves, caring only for the Nazarene, and for him only as he was an object of hate or fear or curiosity, he who loved them all, and was about to die for them. In the spectacle of a great assemblage of people, There are always the bewilderment and fascination one feels while looking over a stretch of sea in agitation. And never had this one been exceeded. Yet Ben-Hur gave it but a passing glance, for that which was going on in the space described would permit no division of his interest. Up on the knoll so high as to be above the living wall, and visible over the heads of an attending company of notables, conspicuous because of his mitre and vestments and his haughty air, stood the high priest. Up the knoll still higher, up quite to the round summit, so as to be seen far and near, was the Nazarene, stooped and suffering, but silent. The wit among the guard had complimented the crown upon his head by putting a reed in his hand for a scepter. Clamors blew upon him like blasts, laughter, execrations, sometimes both together indistinguishably. A man, only a man, O reader, would have charged the blasts with the remainder of his love for the race, and let it go forever. All the eyes then looking were fixed upon the Nazarene. It may have been pity with which he was moved. Whatever the cause, Ben-Hur was conscious of a change in his feelings. A conception of something better than the best of this life, something so much better that it could serve a weak man with strength to endure agonies of spirit as well as of body, something to make death welcome, perhaps another life purer than this one, perhaps the spirit life which Balthazar held to so fast, began to dawn upon his mind clearer and clearer, bringing to him a certain sense that, after all, the mission of the Nazarene was that of guide across the boundary for such as loved him, across the boundary to where his kingdom was set up and waiting for him. Then, as something borne through the air out of the almost forgotten, he heard again, or seemed to hear, the saying of the Nazarene, "I am the resurrection and the life," and the words repeated themselves over and over, and took form, and the dawn touched them with its light, and filled them with a new meaning. And as men repeat a question to grasp and fix the meaning, he asked, gazing at the figure on the hill fainting under its crown, "Who the resurrection, and who the life?" "I am." The figure seemed to say, and say it for him, for instantly he was sensible of a peace such as he had never known, the peace which is the end of doubt and mystery, and the beginning of faith and love and clear understanding. From this dreamy state Ben-Hur was aroused by the sound of hammering. On the summit of the knoll he observed then what had escaped him before, some soldiers and workmen preparing the crosses. The holes for planting the trees were ready, and now the transverse beams were being fitted to their places. "Bid the men make haste," said the high priest to the centurion. "These," and he pointed to the Nazarene, "must be dead by the going down of the sun, and buried that the land may not be defiled." Such is the law. With a better mind, a soldier went to the Nazarene and offered him something to drink, but he refused the cup. Then another went to him and took from his neck the board with the inscription upon it, which he nailed to the tree of the cross, and the preparation was complete. "The crosses are ready," said the centurion to the pontiff, who received the report with a wave of the hand and the reply, "Let the blasphemer go first. The Son of God should be able to save himself. We will see." The people to whom the preparation in its several stages was visible, and who to this time had assailed the hill with incessant cries of impatience, permitted a lull which directly became a universal hush. The part of the infliction most shocking, at least to the thought, was reached. The men were to be nailed to their crosses. When for that purpose the soldiers laid their hands upon the Nazarene first, a shudder passed through the great concourse. The most brutalized shrank with dread. Afterwards there were those who said the air suddenly chilled and made them shiver. "How very still it is," Esther said, as she put her arm about her father's neck, and remembering the torture he himself had suffered, he drew her face down upon his breast, and said trembling, "Avoid it, Esther, avoid it," he said. "I know not, but all who stand and see it, the innocent as well as the guilty, may be cursed from this hour." Balthazar sank upon his knees. "Son of her," said Simonides, with increasing excitement, "son of her, if Jehovah stretch not forth his hand, and quickly, Israel is lost, and we are lost." Ben-Hur answered, calmly, "I have been in a dream, Simonides, and heard in it why all this should be, and why it should go on. It is the will of the Nazarene, it is God's will. Let us do as the Egyptian here, let us hold our peace and pray." As he looked up on the knoll again, the words were wafted to him through the awful stillness, "I am the resurrection and the life." He bowed reverently as to a person speaking. Up on the summit meantime the work went on. The guard took the Nazarene's clothes from him, so that he stood before the millions naked. The stripes of the scourging he had received in the early morning were still bloody upon his back, yet he was laid pitilessly down, and stretched upon the cross. First, the arms upon the transverse beam, the spikes were sharp, a few blows, and they were driven through the tender palms. Next, they drew his knees up until the soles of the feet rested flat upon the tree. Then they placed one foot upon the other, and one spike fixed both of them fast. The dull sound of the hammering was heard outside the guarded space, and such as could not hear, yet saw the hammer as it fell, shivered with fear, and withal not a groan, or cry, or word of remonstrance from the sufferer, nothing at which an enemy could laugh, nothing a lover could regret. "Which way wilt thou have him faced?" asked a soldier, bluntly. "Towards the temple," the pontiff replied. "In dying I would have him see the holy house hath not suffered by him." The workmen put their hands to the cross, and carried it, burden and all, to the place of planting. At a word, they dropped the tree into the hole, and the body of the Nazarene also dropped heavily, and hung by the bleeding hands. Still no cry of pain, only the exclamation divinest of all recorded exclamations, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." The cross, reared now above all other objects, and standing singly out against the sky, was greeted with a burst of delight, and all who could see and read the writing upon a board over the Nazarene's head made haste to decipher it. Soon as read, the legend was adopted by them and communicated, and presently the whole mighty concourse was ringing the salutation from side to side, and repeating it with laughter and groans, "King of the Jews! Hail, King of the Jews!" The pontiff, with a clearer idea of the import of the inscription, protested against it, but in vain. So the titled king, looking from the knoll with dying eyes, must have had the city of his fathers at rest below him, she who had so ignominiously cast him out. The sun was rising rapidly to noon, the hills bared their brown breasts lovingly to it, the more distant mountains rejoiced in the purple with which it so regally dressed them. In the city, the temples, palaces, towers, pinnacles, and all points of beauty and prominence seemed to lift themselves into the unrivaled brilliance, as if they knew the pride they were giving the many who from time to time turned to look at them. Suddenly a dimness began to fill the sky and cover the earth, at first no more than a scarce perceptible fading of the day, a twilight out of time, an evening gliding in upon the splendors of noon, but it deepened, and directly drew attention, whereat the noise of the shouting and laughter fell off, and men, doubting their senses, gazed at each other curiously. Then they looked to the sun again, then at the mountains, getting farther away, at the sky and the near landscape, sinking in shadow, at the hill upon which the tragedy was enacting, and from all these they gazed at each other again, and turned pale, and held their peace. "It is only a mist or passing cloud," Simonides said soothingly to Esther, who was alarmed. "It will brighten presently." Ben-Hur did not think so. "It is not a mist or a cloud," he said. "The spirits who live in the air, the prophets and saints, are at work in mercy to themselves in nature. I say to you, O Simonides, truly as God lives, he who hangs yonder is the Son of God." And leaving Simonides lost in wonder at such a speech from him, he went where Balthasar was kneeling nearby, and laid his hand upon the good man's shoulder. "O wise Egyptian, hearken, thou alone wert right, the Nazarene is indeed the Son of God." Balthasar drew him down to him, and replied, feebly, "I saw him a child in the manger where he was first laid. It is not strange that I knew him sooner than thou, but oh that I should live to see this day. Would I had died with my brethren. Happy Melchior, happy, happy Gaspar." "Comfort thee," said Ben-Hur, "doubtless they too are here." The dimness went on deepening into obscurity, and that into positive darkness, but without deterring the bolder spirits upon the knoll. One after the other the thieves were raised on their crosses, and the crosses planted. The guard was then withdrawn, and the people set free closed in upon the height, and surged up it, like a converging wave. A man might take a look, when a newcomer would push him on, and take his place, to be in turn pushed on, and there were laughter and ribaldry and revilements, all for the Nazarene. "Hot, hot, if thou be king of the Jews, save thyself," a soldier shouted. "I," said a priest, "if he will come down to us now, "We will believe in him." Others wagged their heads wisely, saying, "He would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, but cannot save himself." Others still, "He called himself the Son of God. Let us see if God will have him." What all there is in prejudice no one has ever said. The Nazarene had never harmed the people, far the greater part of them had never seen him except in this his hour of calamity. Yet, singular contrariety, they loaded him with their curses, and gave their sympathy to the thieves. The supernatural night, dropped thus from the heavens, affected Esther as it began to affect thousands of others braver and stronger. "Let us go home," she prayed, twice, 3 times, saying, "It is the frown of God, Father. What other dreadful things may happen, who can tell? I am afraid." Simonides was obstinate. He said little, but was plainly under great excitement, observing, about the end of the first hour, that the violence of the crowding up on the knoll was somewhat abated. At his suggestion the party advanced to take position near the crosses. Ben-Hur gave his arm to Balthazar, yet the Egyptian made the ascent with difficulty. From their new stand, the Nazarene was imperfectly visible, appearing to them not more than a dark suspended figure. They could hear him, however, hear his sighing, which showed an endurance or exhaustion greater than that of his fellow sufferers, for they filled every lull in the noises with their groans and entreaties. The second hour after the suspension passed like the first one. To the Nazarene they were hours of insult, provocation, and slow dying. He spoke but once in the time. Some women came and knelt at the foot of his cross. Among them he recognized his mother with the beloved disciple. "Woman," he said, raising his voice, "behold thy son," and to the disciple, "Behold thy mother." The third hour came, and still the people surged round the hill, held to it by some strange attraction, with which, in probability, the night and midday had much to do. They were quieter than in the preceding hour, yet at intervals they could be heard off in the darkness shouting to each other, multitude calling unto multitude. It was noticeable, also, that coming now to the Nazarene, they approached his cross in silence, took the look in silence, and so departed. This change extended even to the guard, who so shortly before had cast lots for the clothes of the crucified. They stood with their officers a little apart, more watchful of the one convict than of the throngs coming and going. If he but breathed heavily, or tossed his head in a paroxysm of pain, they were instantly on the alert. Most marvelous of all, however, was the altered behavior of the high priest and his following, the wise men who had assisted him in the trial in the night, and, in the victim's face, kept place by him with zealous approval. When the darkness began to fall, they began to lose their confidence. There were among them many learned in astronomy, and familiar with the apparitions so terrible in those days to the masses. Much of the knowledge was descended to them from their fathers far back. Some of it had been brought away at the end of the captivity, and the necessities of the temple service kept it all bright. These closed together when the sun commenced to fade before their eyes, and the mountains and hills to recede. They drew together in a group around their pontiff, and debated what they saw. "The moon is at its full," they said, with truth, "and this cannot be an eclipse." Then, as no one could answer the question common with them all, as no one could account for the darkness, or for its occurrence at that particular time, in their secret hearts they associated it with the Nazarene, and yielded to an alarm which the long continuance of the phenomenon steadily increased. In their place behind the soldiers, they noted every word and motion of the Nazarene, and hung with fear upon his sighs, and talked in whispers. The man might be the Messiah, and then, but they would wait and see. In the meantime Ben-Hur was not once visited by the old spirit. The perfect peace abode with him. He prayed simply that the end might be hastened. He knew the condition of Simonides' mind, that he was hesitating on the verge of belief. He could see the massive face weighed down by solemn reflection. He noticed him casting inquiring glances at the sun, as seeking the cause of the darkness. Nor did he fail to notice the solicitude with which Esther clung to him, smothering her fears to accommodate his wishes. "Be not afraid," he heard him say to her, "but stay and watch with me. Thou mayst live twice the span of my life, and see nothing of human interest equal to this, and there may be revelations more. Let us stay to the close." When the third hour was about half gone, some men of the rudest class, wretches from the tombs about the city, came and stopped in front of the center cross. "This is he, the new king of the Jews," said one of them. The others cried, with laughter, "Hail, all hail, King of the Jews!" Receiving no reply, they went closer. "If thou be King of the Jews, or Son of God, come down," they said loudly. At this, one of the thieves quit groaning, and called to the Nazarene, "Yes, if thou be Christ, save thyself and us." The people laughed and applauded. Then, while they were listening for a reply, the other felon was heard to say to the first one, "Dost thou not fear God? We receive the due rewards of our deeds, but this man hath done nothing amiss." The bystanders were astonished. In the midst of the hush which ensued, the second felon spoke again, but this time to the Nazarene. "Lord," he said, "remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom." Simonides gave a great start. When thou comest into thy kingdom, it was the very point of doubt in his mind, the point he had so often debated with Balthasar. "Didst thou hear," said Ben-Hur to him, "the kingdom cannot be of this world. Yon witness saith the king is but going to his kingdom, and, in effect, I heard the same in my dream." "Hush," said Simonides, more imperiously than ever before in speech to Ben-Hur. "Hush, I pray thee." If the Nazarene should answer, and as he spoke the Nazarene did answer, in a clear voice, full of confidence, "Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise." Simonides waited to hear if that were all. Then he folded his hands and said, "No more, no more, Lord, the darkness is gone. I see with other eyes, even as Balthasar, I see with eyes of perfect faith." The faithful servant had at last his fitting reward. His broken body might never be restored, nor was there riddance of the recollection of his sufferings, or recall of the years embittered by them. But suddenly a new life was shown him, with assurance that it was for him. A new lifeline just beyond this one, and its name was Paradise. There he would find the kingdom of which he had been dreaming, and the king. A perfect peace fell upon him. Over the way, in front of the cross, however, there were surprise and consternation. The cunning casuists there put the assumption underlying the question and the admission underlying the answer together. For saying through the land that he was the Messiah, they had brought the Nazarene to the cross, and, lo, on the cross, more confidently than ever, he had not only reasserted himself, but promised enjoyment of his paradise to a malefactor. They trembled at what they were doing. The pontiff, with all his pride, was afraid. Where got the man his confidence except from truth? And what should the truth be but God? A very little now would put them all to flight. The breathing of the Nazarene grew harder, his sighs became great gasps. Only 3 hours upon the cross, and he was dying. The intelligence was carried from man to man, until every one knew it, and then everything hushed. The breeze faltered and died. A stifling vapor loaded the air. Heat was superadded to darkness, nor might any one unknowing the fact have thought that off the hill, out under the overhanging pall, there were 3 millions of people waiting awestruck what should happen next. They were so still. Then there went out through the gloom, over the heads of such as were on the hill within hearing of the dying man, a cry of despair, if not reproach. My God, why hast thou forsaken me?" The voice startled all who heard it. One it touched uncontrollably. The soldiers in coming had brought with them a vessel of wine and water, and set it down a little way from Ben-Hur. With a sponge dipped into the liquor, and put on the end of a stick, they could moisten the tongue of a sufferer at their pleasure. Ben-Hur thought of the draught he had had at the well near Nazareth. An impulse seized him. Catching up the sponge, he dipped it into the vessel, and started for the cross. "Let him be," the people in the way shouted, angrily. "Let him be." Without minding them, he ran on, and put the sponge to the Nazarene's lips. Too late, too late. The face then plainly seen by Ben-Hur, bruised and black with blood and dust as it was, lighted nevertheless with a sudden glow. The eyes opened wide, and fixed upon someone visible to them alone in the far heavens, and there were content and relief, even triumph, in the shout the victim gave. "It is finished. It is finished." So a hero, dying in the doing a great deed, celebrates his success with a last cheer. The light in the eyes went out. Slowly the crowned head sank upon the laboring breast. Ben-Hur thought the struggle over, but the fainting soul recollected itself. so that he and those around him caught the other in last words, spoken in a low voice, as if to one listening close by. Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. A tremor shook the tortured body. There was a scream of fiercest anguish, and the mission and the earthly life were over at once. The heart, with all its love, was broken, for of that, O reader, the man died. Ben-Hur went back to his friends, saying, simply, it is over, he is dead. In a space incredibly short the multitude was informed of the circumstance. No one repeated it aloud. There was a murmur which spread from the knoll in every direction, a murmur that was little more than whispering, he is dead. He is dead, and that was all. The people had their wish. The Nazarene was dead, yet they stared at each other aghast. His blood was upon them, and while they stood staring at each other, the ground commenced to shake. Each man took hold of his neighbor to support himself. In a twinkling the darkness disappeared, and the sun came out, and everybody, as with the same glance, beheld the crosses upon the hill all reeling drunken like in the earthquake. They beheld all three of them, but the one in the center was arbitrary. It alone would be seen, and for that it seemed to extend itself upwards, and lift its burden, and swing it to and fro higher and higher in the blue of the sky, and every man among them who had jeered at the Nazarene, every one who had struck him, every one who had voted to crucify him, every one who had marched in the procession from the city, every one who had in his heart wished him dead, and they were as 10 to 1, felt that he was in some way individually singled out from the many, and that if he would live he must get away quickly as possible from that menace in the sky. They started to run. They ran with all their might, on horseback, and camels, and in chariots they ran, as well as on foot, but then as if it were mad at them for what they had done, and had taken up the cause of the unoffending and friendless dead, the earthquake pursued them, and tossed them about, and flung them down, and terrified them yet more by the horrible noise of great rocks grinding and rending beneath them. They beat their breasts and shrieked with fear. His blood was upon them, the homebred and the foreign, priest and layman, beggar, Sadducee, Pharisee, were overtaken in the race, and tumbled about indiscriminately. If they called on the Lord, the outraged earth answered for him in fury, and dealt them all alike. It did not even know wherein the high priest was better than his guilty brethren. Overtaking him, it tripped him up also, and smirched the fringe of his robe, and filled the golden bells with sand, and his mouth with dust. He and his people were alike in the one thing, at least the blood of the Nazarene was upon them all. When the sunlight broke upon the crucifixion, the mother of the Nazarene, the disciple, and the faithful women of Galilee, the centurion and his soldiers, and Ben-Hur and his party, were all who remained upon the hill. These had not time to observe the flight of the multitude. They were too loudly called upon to take care of themselves. Seat thyself here, said Ben-Hur to Esther, making a place for her at her father's feet. Now cover thine eyes and look not up, but put thy trust in God, and the spirit of yon just man so foully slain. Nay, said Simonides, reverently, let us henceforth speak of him as the Christ. Be it so, said Ben-Hur. Presently a wave of the earthquake struck the hill. The shrieks of the thieves upon the reeling crosses were terrible to hear. Though giddy with the movements of the ground, Ben-Hur had time to look at Balthasar, and beheld him prostrate and still. He ran to him and called. There was no reply. The good man was dead. Then Ben-Hur remembered to have heard a cry in answer, as it were, to the scream of the Nazarene in his last moment, but he had not looked to see from whom it had proceeded, and ever after he believed the spirit of the Egyptian accompanied that of his master over the boundary into the kingdom of paradise. The idea rested not only upon the cry heard, but upon the exceeding fitness of the distinction. If faith were worthy reward in the person of Gaspar, and love in that of Melchior, surely he should have some special meed who through a long life, and so excellently illustrated the three virtues in combination, faith, love, and good works. The servants of Balthasar had deserted their master, but when all was over, the two Galileans bore the old man and his litter back to the city. It was a sorrowful procession that entered the south gate of the palace of the Hurs, about the set of sun, that memorable day. About the same hour the body of the Christ was taken down from the cross. The remains of Balthasar were carried to the guest chamber. All the servants hastened weeping to see him, for he had the love of every living thing with which he had in any wise to do. But when they beheld his face, and the smile upon it, they dried their tears, saying, "It is well, he is happier this evening than when he went out in the morning." Ben-Hur would not trust a servant to inform Iras what had befallen her father. He went himself to see her and bring her to the body. He imagined her grief. She would now be alone in the world. It was a time to forgive and pity her. He remembered he had not asked why she was not of the party in the morning, or where she was. He remembered he had not thought of her. And, from shame, he was ready to make any amends, the more so as he was about to plunge her into such acute grief. He shook the curtains of her door, and though he heard the ringing of the little bells echoing within, he had no response. He called her name, and again he called, still no answer. He drew the curtain aside and went into the room. She was not there. He ascended hastily to the roof in search of her, nor was she there. He questioned the servants. None of them had seen her during the day. After a long quest everywhere through the house, Ben-Hur returned to the guest chamber, and took the place by the dead which should have been hers. And he bethought him there how merciful the Christ had been to his aged servant. At the gate of the kingdom of paradise happily the afflictions of this life, even its desertions, are left behind and forgotten by those who go in and rest. When the gloom of the burial was nigh gone, on the 9th day after the healing, the law being fulfilled, Ben-Hur brought his mother and Tirzah home, and from that day, in that house the most sacred names possible of utterance by men were always coupled worshipfully together, God the Father and Christ the Son. About 5 years after the crucifixion, Esther, the wife of Ben-Hur, sat in her room in the beautiful villa by Misenum. It was noon, with a warm Italian sun making summer for the roses and vines outside. Everything in the apartment was Roman, except that Esther wore the garments of a Jewish matron. Tirzah and 2 children at play upon a lion skin on the floor were her companions, and one had only to observe how carefully she watched them to know that the little ones were hers. Time had treated her generously. She was more than ever beautiful, and in becoming mistress of the villa, she had realized one of her cherished dreams. In the midst of this simple, home-like scene, a servant appeared in the doorway and spoke to her, a woman in the atrium to speak with the mistress. "Let her come, I will receive her here." Presently the stranger entered. At sight of her the Jewess arose, and was about to speak. Then she hesitated, changed color, and finally drew back, saying, "I have known you, good woman. You are, I was Iras, the daughter of Balthazar." Esther conquered her surprise, and bade the servant bring the Egyptian a seat. "No," said Iras, coldly, "I will retire directly." The two gazed at each other. We know what Esther presented, a beautiful woman, a happy mother, a contented wife. On the other side, it was very plain that fortune had not dealt so gently with her former rival. The tall figure remained with some of its grace, but an evil light had tainted the whole person. The face was coarse, the large eyes were red and pursed beneath the lower lids, there was no color in her cheeks. The lips were cynical and hard, and general neglect was leading rapidly to premature old age. Her attire was ill-chosen and draggled. The mud of the road clung to her sandals. Iras broke the painful silence. "These are thy children." Esther looked at them and smiled. "Yes, will you not speak to them?" "I would scare them," Iras replied. Then she drew closer to Esther, and seeing her shrink, said, "Be not afraid. Give thy husband a message for me. Tell him his enemy is dead, and that for the much misery he brought me I slew him, his enemy, the Messiah. Further, tell thy husband that for the harm I sought to do him, I have been punished until even he would pity me." Tears arose in Esther's eyes, and she was about to speak. "Nay," said Iras, "I do not want pity or tears. Tell him, finally, I have found that to be a Roman is to be a brute. Farewell." She moved to go. Esther followed her. "Stay and see my husband. He has no feeling against you. He sought for you everywhere. He will be your friend. I will be your friend. We are Christians." The other was firm. "No, I am what I am of choice. It will be over shortly." "But," Esther hesitated, "have we nothing you would wish?" "Nothing too?" The countenance of the Egyptian softened. Something like a smile played about her lips. She looked at the children upon the floor. "There is something," she said. Esther followed her eyes, and with quick perception answered, "It is yours." Iras went to them, and knelt on the lion's skin, and kissed them both. Rising slowly, she looked at them, then passed to the door and out of it without a parting word. She walked rapidly, and was gone before Esther could decide what to do. Ben-Hur, when he was told of the visit, knew certainly what he had long surmised, that on the day of the crucifixion Iras had deserted her father for Masala. Nevertheless, he set out immediately and hunted for her vainly. They never saw her more, or heard of her. The blue bay, with all its laughing under the sun, has yet its dark secrets. Had it a tongue, it might tell us of the Egyptian. Simonides lived to be a very old man. In the 10th year of Nero's reign, he gave up the business so long centered in the warehouse at Antioch. To the last he kept a clear head and a good heart, and was successful. One evening, in the year named, he sat in his armchair on the terrace of the warehouse. Ben-Hur and Esther, and their 3 children, were with him. The last of the ships swung at mooring in the current of the river, all the rest had been sold. In the long interval between this and the day of the crucifixion, but one sorrow had befallen them. That was when the mother of Ben-Hur died. And then and now their grief would have been greater but for their Christian faith. The ship spoken of had arrived only the day before, bringing intelligence of the persecution of Christians begun by Nero in Rome. And the party on the terrace were talking of the news when Malik, who was still in our service, approached and delivered a package to Ben-Hur. "Who brings this?" the latter asked, after reading. "An Arab. Where is he?" "He left immediately." "Listen," said Ben-Hur to Simonides. He read then the following letter: "I, Ildarim, the son of Ildarim the generous, and sheik of the tribe of Ildarim, to Judah, son of Hur. Know, O friend of my father's, how my father loved you. Read what his earwig sent, and you will know. His will is my will, therefore what he gave is thine. All the Parthians took from him in the great battle in which they slew him I have retaken this writing, with other things, and vengeance, and all the brood of that Mira who in his time was mother of so many stars. Peace be to you and all yours. This voice out of the desert is the voice of Ildarim, Sheikh." Ben-Hur next unrolled a scrap of papyrus yellow as a withered mulberry leaf. It required the daintiest handling. Proceeding, he read, "Ildarim, surnamed the generous, sheik of the tribe of Ildarim, to the son who succeeds me. All I have, O son, shall be thine in the day of thy succession, except that property by Antioch known as the Orchard of Palms, and it shall be to the son of her who brought us such glory in the circus, to him and is forever. Dishonor not thy father, Ildarim the generous, sheik." "What say you?" asked Ben-Hur of Simonides. Esther took the papers pleased, and read them to herself. Simonides remained silent. His eyes were upon the ship, but he was thinking. At length he spoke. "Son of Hur," he said, gravely, "the Lord has been good to you in these later years. You have much to be thankful for. Is it not time to decide finally the meaning of the gift of the great fortune now all in your hand, and growing? I decided that long ago. The fortune was meant for the service of the giver, not a part, Simonides, but all of it. The question with me has been, how can I make it most useful in his cause? And of that tell me, I pray you." Simonides answered, "The great sums you have given to the church here in Antioch, I am witness to. Now, instantly almost with this gift of the generous sheiks, comes the news of the persecution of the brethren in Rome. It is the opening of a new field. The light must not go out in the capital. Tell me how I can keep it alive." "I will tell you. The Romans, even this Nero, hold 2 things sacred. I know of no others they so hold. They are the ashes of the dead and all places of burial. If you cannot build temples for the worship of the Lord above ground, then build them below the ground, and to keep them from profanation, carry to them the bodies of all who die in the faith." Ben-Hur arose excitedly. "It is a great idea," he said. "I will not wait to begin it. Time forbids waiting. The ship that brought the news of the suffering of our brethren shall take me to Rome. I will sail tomorrow." He turned to Malik. "Get the ship ready, Malik, and be thou ready to go with me." "It is well," said Simonides. "And thou, Esther, what sayest thou?" asked Ben-Hur. Esther came to his side, and put her hand on his arm, and answered, "So wilt thou best serve the Christ. O my husband, let me not hinder, but go with thee and help, if any of my readers, visiting Rome, will make the short journey to the catacomb of San Calixto, which is more ancient than that of San Sebastiano, he will see what became of the fortune of Ben-Hur and give him thanks. Out of that vast tomb Christianity issued to supersede the Caesars. The end. Notes: 1. Called hortator. 2. Called rector.